So, welcome everyone. Our speaker today, Dr. Catherine Thomasson, is active in state climate policy as the lobby coordinator of MCAT, Mobilizing Climate Action in Oregon. She served, as executive director of Physicians for Social Responsibility in Washington, D.C. from 2012 to 2017, and is on the Healthy Climate team of Oregon PSR. She's an internal medicine physician by training and has contributed to city and county advisory boards for water treatment management, toxics, and climate. She finds inspiration in hiking our mountains and forests. Tonight, she will share harms of natural gas for us and the planet. There are alternatives. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that kind introduction. So we're going to cover why methane is bad for our health, bad for our wallet, and it's bad for the climate. And there are so many things we can do about it. Just because methane is called natural gas doesn't mean it's safe. I just want people to keep that in mind. It's been a great PR campaign that the gas companies have done to make us think that it's safe and clean. Natural gas is really mostly 95% a flammable fossil gas. That's the chemical derivation. When it's pulled up from deep in the earth, it has to be cleaned, processed, but it still has about 5% other hazardous chemicals like benzene, which is carcinogenic, and other impurities, sometimes from fracking itself or sometimes just from the earth, like radon, a radioactive element, and other solvents. So it's natural, quote unquote, gas is methane, along with some impurities. Next slide. But there's lots of other methane production. This is a lovely schematic of a cow eating its grass and whatever else it's going to eat. And it has multiple stomachs and it belches an enormous amount of methane. And for your later perusal, when you get this PowerPoint in your inbox, you can see one other thing you can do for the climate is eating lower on the food chain, particularly eliminating beef and other animals with multiple stomachs like lamb and goat. Cheese, of course, comes from cows as well, along with other animals. So taking a look at that in the future, but that's not the focus of today's talk, but it's another source of methane. Methane is both a gas, and then we take that gas and we burn it. Everything that burns here on the planet, we breathe it. It goes right into the atmosphere. If we burn it in our homes, it causes indoor pollution. If we burn it outside, or if we vent it outside, it causes outdoor air pollution. It can be explosive, and so I'm going to cover some of those topics. These are the three major pollutants that come from burning methane. These are the same major pollutants that we get from burning gasoline. So particulate matter are these microscopic particles that are so small they get deep into our lungs, get transferred into our bloodstream, and can harm our brain, our heart, our placentas. It increases risks of heart attack and stroke, especially in those who are vulnerable to those, and lung diseases, among many other things. Carbon monoxide. How many people have a carbon monoxide alarm in their home? Okay. Some do. I don't, because I got rid of gas. I don't burn anything in my home anymore. So carbon monoxide just comes from burning fuels that are not combusted well. And they can block, when we breathe it, it can block our blood's ability to carry oxygen. And then lastly, one that we're going to really focus on just a little bit more is nitrogen oxides. And these gases are created by burning fuels at high temperatures. They lead to ozone when combined with the sunlight, and that's actually on the ground level is a air pollutant as well as another greenhouse gas. And they're associated with asthma, premature death, and lots of other impacts. These are the same pollutants that now that we're getting electric cars, we're going to breathe in less and less in terms of particulates, carbon monoxide, and nitrogen oxides. I think it's really important to understand that we have an outdoor air pollutant standard for nitrous oxides, and that's 100 parts per billion that you're exposed to for an hour. There is no indoor standard for nitrous oxides, despite the fact that we spend 90% of our time inside. Gas stoves can emit levels of nitrogen oxides that would be illegal outdoors. These levels are 50 to 40% higher in homes that cook with gas. So they also can come from burning cigarettes, burning other things in your home. A recent study from Stanford looked at the combined nitrous oxide exposures, both indoors and outdoors, in 17 cities and found that we can cut our exposure by 25 to 50% just by switching to electric cooking. Now you know why we have a chimney in our house or a vent in our house to take these products of combustion in that red arrow out of our home when we burn a gas in our furnace. And because you don't want to be breathing that air, right? You don't want to breathe those combustion byproducts. But our stove doesn't get vented to the outdoors. That's certainly a problem. You can have a hood vent over your gas stove, but actually a lot of studies show that most of them don't do any good. Some of them aren't even vented truly outside. They just recirculate the air in your kitchen. So it'd be kind of good to know which kind you have. And so some people who cook with gas even open their windows, especially if they have somebody who has asthma in the house. Asthma is the #1 chronic disease in children. And a meta-analysis of multiple studies, a lot of them were done 15 or 20 years ago, but not publicized. 42% of those with asthma had more symptoms in children living in homes with gas stoves. And there's a 24% increased risk for a lifetime diagnosis of asthma in children who grow up with gas stoves. We can burn gas in our homes, but we also burn fossil fuels in for electricity production, for industry, and so on. But burning fossil fuels in Oregon homes and businesses releases more harmful NOx emissions as much as the state's power generation and cement manufacturing combined. Something to think about. Fossil fuel equipment in Oregon homes and businesses release as much climate pollution as 1.1 million passenger cars. So this is really a significant source of greenhouse gas emissions and just frank air pollution in terms of our lung, heart, and other impacts. Gas stoves leak methane even when they're turned off. As much as 75% of the leakage occurs when the stove is actually off. Now, methane itself as a gas doesn't harm us. It has that little bit of sulfur put into it so you can smell it. That's for explosion hazard because you don't want your house going up in an explosion. But again, just to remind you that methane gas that's from fossil, as well as if you collect it from, manure sewage treatment plants or from cows, have other contaminants in them as well. And in this case, benzene would probably be the most harmful, which is a carcinogenic chemical. Next slide. And here's the explosion risks. These are 2 examples in Portland. In 2016, there was actually an explosion that injured 8 people and caused $17 million worth of damage. And last year, we have a local theater that had to be evacuated because of a significant gas leak. The leakage they did studies more on the East Coast because the pipes there are older. And it's estimated that most pipes last about 50 years. And the amount of leaks that occur across a city are very high. And the gas companies don't even want to find them because they cost too much to repair. So they only repair the ones that are very high. We all want to live in clean and safe homes. And so if you're still cooking with or heating with methane gas, there's a couple things you can do, as I mentioned. Turn your fan hood on and even cook on the back burner so that it's closer to the fan and goes straight up. You can choose to buy an inexpensive hot plate, an induction burner, if you are one of those wonderful cooks that wants to be able to turn the heat down and know it's going to get turned down immediately, which you can do with induction, which is uses magnetic energy. It's really good, and I don't think I ever did this when I was a homeowner with a gas furnace, is have somebody come in periodically every year, couple years, to actually service the gas furnace to make sure that the gas is burning cleanly so that it has a good ratio of oxygen to burning so that it's not creating a lot of carbon monoxide. And then when it's time to replace the stove, replace it. Get rid of the gas in your home. These are some examples of alternatives. Induction stoves. Some people do have to buy new pots so that actually carry that magnetic energy to the food content inside. Heat pump water heaters cost more. I had one put into my house, but over a fairly short period of time, 2 or 3 years, you make up the difference in its efficiency. So it's about twice or more as efficient as a standard electric hot water heater. And then that last picture is an outdoor heat pump. There are high efficiency heat pumps in at least 3 different manufacturers that can continue to take the heat out of the external air and bring it into your house, just like a refrigerator takes the heat out of the refrigerator and turns it out into the room. So this is just using a refrigerant, just like our refrigerators. And then in the summer, voila, we have air conditioning at the same time because it just reverses the function. So these are things we used to think were okay. Cigarettes, DDT, asbestos, lead paint. And now we know that gas stoves are really not all that great. So do people know why you see these fires coming off of, you may have seen it where they're doing methane processing or production. Have you ever seen that? They do that because methane as a gas is much more potent than carbon dioxide. And so it's better to burn it off than to allow the methane to go into the atmosphere. So I just wanted to mention that with that. So all of our utility bills are going up. Certainly in Oregon. I can't speak for Washington or Canada. Our bills in Oregon jumped 38% from 2021 to 2025. One of the major issues was the wholesale price of natural gas spiked in 2022. But another way that people can reduce their utility cost is to have only one utility, and that's electricity, because you have to pay the base load or the amount of money for the lines and the equipment and even paying for investing in future equipment. So investing long term in more methane infrastructure. So as we build new developments, it locks us into high costs for decades to come. So as I mentioned, new gas pipelines last up to 50 years. And most of the companies are allowed to use existing customers to help pay for and subsidize expanding the gas system by charging us for adding new customers. Heat pumps are more expensive than a new gas furnace. But if you think about buying a gas furnace and an air conditioner, heat pumps are cheaper. They're more efficient in terms of the amount of BTUs they create, even than a gas furnace. If people buy a new gas furnace, they're kind of locked in for 30 years. So it's good to know about these issues before you have to make the decision about what to do. And so I'm going to get to the climate component of this. Do you think that methane is better than coal in terms of creating electricity for the climate? Elizabeth's shaking her head no. There's a lot of myths about this. Most people don't understand why we should reduce gas use. Again, the companies, Northwest Natural Gas, really try and sell the fact that they have a natural source of energy. I like sunshine as a natural source of energy, but that's all the burning that's going on is like millions of miles away from us. In polling, less than half of Oregonians understand that methane is as big a contributor to climate change as coal. And that's for a couple of different reasons. We are lucky to have a blanket of greenhouse gases around the earth. Otherwise, it would be too cold for plants to grow and fish to swim and us to survive. But when we increase that blanket, of course, around of the atmosphere, more of the heat is kept in. And of course, that's the whole cause of climate change. Methane as a molecule is more potent greenhouse gas. It traps heat much more effectively than carbon dioxide. In the first 20 years of being released into the atmosphere, it is 86 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Even after 20 years, even though the methane itself has degraded in the atmosphere, it's still 20 times more potent averaged over those 100 years, as is a molecule of carbon dioxide. So as we mentioned, the major sources of methane are fossil gas production, and they leak. So we're putting methane directly into the atmosphere. In Oregon, we have our buildings. Agriculture and dairy farms are the largest sources of methane pollution. And when it's burned, it still makes CO2. So when you burn methane in a electricity producing plant, it produces half the CO2 as a coal burning power plant, but it's leaked all this other methane, and that's what makes it equivalent to burning coal. Now, burning coal is dirtier in terms of air pollution, but it produces the same amount of climate pollution. So here's all the places where it leaks. It leaks in drilling and now fracturing, or called fracking. People have heard of that, I hope, because we were running out of natural gas and we were going to, 20 years ago, I was fighting against liquefied natural gas terminals where we would accept liquefied natural gas from other countries. And because of fracking, we are now one of the leading producers of natural gas in this country as opposed to any others. In its production, it leaks. In its processing, it leaks. It is a gas. And then transportation and distribution is a major source as well. And then in these discussions and analyses of the impacts of methane, they don't even count the leakage at the end use in our homes or in our buildings. So we can ask for elimination of these leaks, and President Obama actually did that, as did President Biden. But all of these programs have gone away with our current president. A lot of wells are abandoned, and with fracking, the wells go dry much quicker than they have been expecting. It's important for the companies to find and fix leaks, and they can do that with drone monitoring. They can do that with a lot of other monitoring using radar, kind of infrared imaging. And then, of course, we can reduce our methane use, and that's kind of what we're talking about here today. Like everything, we can improve our building efficiency, which will reduce our heating and cooling needs, and electrify everything so that we can get methane out. And we'll talk about a few more of those things as well. Oh, just a comment on people heard about renewable natural gas. Basically, the gas companies have been held accountable to reduce the amount of their footprint, their carbon footprint, which methane is part of their carbon footprint. And so they have been investing in trying to capture methane from leaking from confined animal feed operations or manure management, sewage management, either from animals or from humans. those work better at the local level. So if we have a sewage treatment plant, I think here in Portland, that uses the methane to drive a turbine and you provide all the electricity that it needs. So that's a sort of contained, but if you create this renewable natural gas and cart it around, first of all, it's not as clean as the processing that is done for fossil gas. So I'm not sure I would want to be burning it in my house. Northwest Natural Gas was supposed to be at a 4% renewable natural gas level. They have done no production here in this state. They have been investing in the Midwest, and they've only achieved a 1% investment of renewable natural gas. So it's greenwashing, basically, is what it is. The real solutions are electrification and reducing the amounts that we need. So shifting homes and buildings from gas to electric heat pumps, water heaters, and induction stoves. In terms of improving our grid, we can invest in a stronger, smarter electric grid. That bill died last session in Oregon that can handle heat waves and storms. There's really a bottleneck here in Oregon, and most of the grid is owned by Bonneville, and they have no desire to invest in this grid system. And so we need to find ways to do that. We can use our current grid and actually use different metal that doesn't sag with heat or fire, so it's less likely to cause fires and can carry twice as much electricity as it's currently carrying. But there's also amazing energy efficiencies that people are doing in their homes with insulation, with new buildings, with roof, and then creating their own electricity with rooftop solar, batteries, and microgrids. One of the things that the gas companies have been required to do on a much bigger level on the East Coast is to create thermal energy networks. So if you think about it, using outdoor air temperatures for trying to suck heat out on a day that's 15 degrees is kind of hard. If we go underground about a couple of feet, the temperature is the same all year round. It's a moderate 50 some degrees. So it's easier to do that heat exchange with a much smaller gradient. These thermal energy networks actually use the heat that might be produced in a large building, as well as the heat from the ground, with ground sourced, even just using water as the so-called refrigerant that can be heated up or cooled down with no pollution whatsoever. And that should be required. And this is a great new model, business model for natural gas companies. So what can we all do? Well, it's good to talk with your neighbors and talk with your friends about, brag a little about your new induction stove or that you got your furnace tuned up and you were surprised that it had higher leaks than you expected. Those are the things that we can do, putting solar panels on, getting insulation, which is always the first step. But we also have to change policy. So joining an organization that's taking action, or as somebody mentioned earlier on the phone or on the call, that they were supporting organizations that work on climate change. I just listed three there: the Physicians for Social Responsibility, the Sierra Clubs, League of Women Voters, all work on climate. And then the last one is cut the beef.
We thank you so much,
Thank you.
Catherine.